Okay, let's get into this. We're diving into a film that I think gets constantly and really unfairly just pigeonholed as this big sci-fi heist movie.
Hmm,
We're talking about Christopher Nolan's Inception, of course.
of course.
But our mission today is not to review the action scenes, as amazing as they are. We're going to treat this film as, well, as a philosophical text.
A roadmap of the subconscious, really. And I think most urgently, a kind of blueprint for where we are right now.
Exactly. This isn't just a film review. Our sources, we're talking psychoanalytic studies, sociological papers, they dissect Inception as a prophetic warning.
We're going to be using the lens of cinematic metaphor, some Jungian psychology, and what specialists are now calling digital pathology.
And the goal for you, our listener, is to get to that feeling of intellectual satisfaction, something that really shakes your foundation a little.
We want to move you from just being a passive consumer of this story to someone who's actively questioning your own anchors to reality.
We're going to challenge what we're calling the angle of reality.
And to do that, we have to start in, I think, the most chilling, the most prescient scene in the entire film. We have to go into Yusuf's basement.
The dream den. Ooh. You can almost smell it, right? That grimy subterranean chamber where you see all those old men hooked up to the dream machine.
They're not sleeping peacefully. They're slumped in chairs. They're connected by wires, just completely lost in their own minds. They look like they're wasting away.
And Cobb, he voices our confusion. He asks Yusuf, the chemist, why are they here for 20 hours a day?
And Yusuf's reply, it's so matter of fact, but it just hits you. He says, and this is a crucial line from our sources, they don't come here to sleep. They come here to wake up. The dream became their reality.
That is the hook.
Yeah.
The entire thing right there. If that scene isn't a tragically accurate prediction of today, I don't know what is. We are those old men in the basement.
We absolutely are. We do it with Wi-Fi and charging cables. We're using our phones, our social media streams, VR headsets, what our sources are calling the digital aphion, a digital opiate.
And it's not just for distraction, is it? We are actively looking for a reality that is, frankly, preferable to the one we're physically in.
That's the core of it. We're suffering from what the research calls reality fatigue. The real world, the consensus world, it just feels too messy, too painful.
We're just boring, profoundly and persistently boring. We are tired of the friction of the tangible world.
Exactly. Tired of reality's resistance. And so we seek consciousness in the curated feed, in the optimized game. This deep dive is our way of looking at how this 2010 film gave us the blueprint for that exact flight from the tangible.
Okay, let's jump right into the first major layer of this because our research lays it out so cleanly. It's this idea that Inception is, at its core, an elaborate allegory for the filmmaking process itself.
And this isn't just a fan theory. This is something Christopher Nolan has actually confirmed. The entire heist operation is like an autobiographical confession about the struggle and the anxiety of making a high-stakes film.
So every member of the team.
Every member represents a key role on a massive film set.
Okay, so let's start at the top. Dom Cobb, he's the director.
Unquestionably. He's the one with the impossible vision, he sells the project, and he's ultimately the one who has to pull a cohesive product out of all this chaos.
The sources describe him as the visionary and wounded leader, the quintessential wounded auteur.
Yes. And like so many great directors, he can't help but project his own personal trauma, his whole obsession with Mal directly onto the set.
Which in this case is the dream.
Exactly. And that's a real thing, you know? A director's own fixations can leak into a film's narrative and potentially threaten the whole project because the personal starts to overwhelm the professional.
And his job literally starts with a pitch. He has to convince Saito, who represents the studio.
The money.
The money to finance this insane, multi-layered dream. Then he has to convince Ariadne, the designer, to build these impossible labyrinthine sets.
It's the perfect mirror of a director trying to sell a high-risk, high-concept, multi-million-dollar vision to skeptical people who want a guaranteed return on their investment.
Okay, so moving down the ladder, we get to Arthur, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character.
Arthur is the producer, the point man. Or maybe the first assistant director, the one who keeps the trains running on time, so to speak.
He's the pragmatist. He's not really concerned with Cobb's artistic vision.
No, not at all. He is obsessed with security, logistics, infrastructure. the safety of the whole enterprise.
And he's the voice of logic, which is so crucial. Without him, Cobb's artistic recklessness would just destroy everything.
Right. When Cobb wants to dive deeper or improvise, Arthur's the one saying, what about the budget?
And the budget here is time, the sedation.
Precisely. He's calculating the duration, the risks of extending the timeline. He's the numbers guy.
We see this so perfectly in that zero-gravity hotel corridor fight. It's probably the most famous scene, but its metaphorical meaning is what's really brilliant.
It is. Because while Cobb and the others are doing the emotional, artistic work on the deeper levels, the main story, Arthur is stuck one level up, handling a purely technical crisis.
The set is literally spinning out of control.
It's the perfect backstage metaphor. The loss of gravity, the attacking security, that's the infrastructure collapsing. And Arthur, the producer, is there managing this technical failure in the backstage area.
Wrestling with the physics of the set while trying to manage the kicks to the deeper levels. His whole job is just to make sure the show continues, even while the stage is being pulled apart.
It really shows how the producer's job is often unseen. It's not glamorous, but it is absolutely essential. He's dealing with the technical debt of Cobb's artistic ambition.
If he fails, they all die. The whole production collapses.
Instantly. Next, you have Ariadne. She is the production designer, the art director, the architect.
Her job is creation. She builds the physical world of the dream, which is, it's literally the film set.
And her name, it's so important. The sources really stress this. Ariadne from Greek mythology, she's the one who gave Theseus the thread to escape the Minotaur's labyrinth.
So she's the guide through the maze of the mind.
Exactly. She has to understand not just the look of the place, but how the set design will psychologically impact the target, Robert Fisher.
Her creations are the purest expression of cinema's power. The bend in Paris streets, the Penrose stairs.
The Snow Fortress. It isn't just window dressing. It's all calculated psychological engineering. It's about manipulating reality just enough to maintain Fisher's suspension of disbelief.
If the set feels fake, the whole thing falls apart. The emotional goal fails.
Which brings us to Ames, Tom Hardy's character, the chameleon.
He's the actor, the method actor, the forger. His whole thing is shifting between identities, impersonating Peter Browning, becoming a woman.
He weaponizes identity. It's the very definition of acting as transformation.
And here we get that classic on-set conflict, the tension between Eames, the actor, and Arthur, the producer.
It's so good. Arthur is all disciplined, demanding they stick to the plan. Ames is this carefree, improvisational force, always wanting creative freedom, making risky moves.
It's logistics versus creativity.
It is. Eames says, "You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling." He's pushing the boundaries. Arthur is pulling the reins, demanding tactical security. You need both, but they are always at odds.
And who's funding all of this creative chaos? Saito?
The studio executive, the stakeholder. He's got the budget to buy the airline, and he wants a concrete, measurable result.
The collapse of his competitor's company.
And his presence in the dream is a perfect mirror of an executive coming onto the set, just sort of hovering, making sure he's going to get his return on investment.
So when he gets injured on that first level...
It's deeply symbolic.
Yeah.
It represents the financial risk of the project. If Saito dies, if the studio pulls its funding...
everyone falls to limbo.
Which is the perfect metaphor for catastrophic career-ending unemployment. The project gets shelved forever in some forgotten archive.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us to the whole point of the production.
Right.
Robert Fisher, the target.
He is the most critical metaphor of all. He is the reason for this whole elaborate mechanism. The director, the actors, the budget, the sets, it's all for him.
Fisher is the audience.
Yes. And this is where our research brings in this concept of catharsis engineering. The goal isn't just to tell Fisher a story. The goal is to impose an idea, the Inception, that feels like it came from his own mind.
Which is the ultimate goal of cinema, isn't it?
Absolutely. You put the audience in a dark room, the theater, the dream, and you elicit a real transformative emotional reaction from a completely fictional story that they momentarily believe is real.
So Fisher's emotional breakdown at the end when he finds that little pinwheel in the safe.
That is the successful moment of engineered catharsis. The sources say it's the equivalent of you walking out of a theater having felt something so profound that you might actually change your life based on a fictional experience.
So in a way, the whole heist movie is a love letter to the manipulative power of filmmaking.
Or maybe a warning.
That structural breakdown really helps see the mechanics of the dream, but now we have to turn inward, from the structure of the film to the structure of the dreamer.
Right, because at its heart, Inception is a psychological drama dressed up as an action movie. And to get the real stakes, we need to bring in some Jungian analytical psychology.
We're moving from the set design to the mind map. And the key to that whole psychological landscape is Mal.
She's this violent, disruptive force that almost destroys the entire mission. But the crucial thing to understand is that Mal is not a person. She's not an external villain.
She's a projection inside Cobb's mind.
Exactly. And our sources are very clear on this. She embodies the Jungian concept of the shadow.
The shadow. Can you break that down for us?
So the shadow is basically the repressed, rejected, often dark side of your conscious ego. It's everything Cobb doesn't want to admit about himself. Mal embodies his crushing, unrelenting guilt over her death.
So his guilt is a form of psychic energy.
A powerful one. He feels responsible for the inception he performed on her, the one that led her to kill herself. And Mal is that raw, self-destructive regret given a body and a voice.
Jung called this an autonomous complex, right?
That's the term. It's like a self-aware, resentful piece of software running in the background of Cobb's mind, completely outside of his conscious control.
And that's why Ariadne's line to him is so important. She says, your guilt defines her. That's what feeds her.
Yes. Mal is always sabotaging the mission because her mission is Cobb's internal, self-punishing mission. Ruin everything because you deserve to suffer. Every time he denies that guilt, he just feeds her, makes her stronger.
The sources also talk about her as a poisoned anima.
Right. So the anima, in Jungian terms, is the unconscious feminine side that exists within the male psyche. Normally, it's a source of guidance, intuition, inspiration.
But Cobb's is poisoned.
It's poisoned because he's the one who planted that radical doubt in Mal's mind, the idea that their reality wasn't real. That idea metastasized. So his anima, instead of guiding him toward clarity and connection, is constantly pulling him toward death, toward limbo.
He's experiencing what Jung called anima possession.
He is. When the anima is corrupted like that, the person risks detaching completely from objective reality. They prefer the inner world of fantasy and delusion. Cobb is perpetually on the brink of that.
And the film gives us such a brilliant visual for this, the elevator metaphor.
It maps perfectly to the topographical model of the mind that both Freud and Jung used.
So you have the rooftop, which is our conscious daily life.
Then the lower floors, that's the pre-conscious memories you can access easily. But the deep, dark, descending floors of that elevator, that's the unconscious.
And where does Cobb keep Mal locked away?
In the basement. The lowest, darkest level in that metaphorical cage of the hotel room. He's trying to repress the trauma, just file it away.
But Jung would say that's a disastrous strategy.
Completely. Locking away trauma doesn't make it disappear. It just allows it to fester and grow in power. So every time Cobb goes deeper into a dream, he's just increasing the pressure on that cage door. He's increasing the risk of confronting the monster he tried to bury.
And the unconscious always finds a way out, doesn't it?
Always. Which leads us to one of the most powerful psychological images in the whole film. The sudden appearance of the freight train.
Just smashing through the middle of a crowded city street.
That train is the ultimate return of the repressed. It's the heavy physical manifestation of the memory of the suicide train track they used to escape limbo the first time.
It's so powerful because no matter how well Ariadne, the architect of logic, builds the world,
the raw trauma just breaks through the walls. It's this moment of unresolved psychic pain that literally destroys the set. And our research highlights this as proof that you can't control your own psychology through conscious planning alone.
the emotional reality will always find a way to break through.
And that failure of control, that's what leads to limbo, that unstructured oceanic dream space. It's defined as a place of pure, unbound creativity, where the individual ego just melts away.
In Jungian terms, limbo is like the collective unconscious.
A very dangerous version of it. It's that deep universal layer of archetypes and primal instincts. The danger for Cobb and Mal, who spent a subjective 50 years down there, was the God complex.
They could create anything. They were omnipotent.
But the longer they stayed, the more they lost that crucial anchoring distinction between what was real and what was imagined, that total loss of perspective. That's the psychological definition of psychosis. The journey into limbo is always a gamble with your own sanity.
And that journey into limbo, that preference for a completely subjective, created world, It brings us right back to where we started. Use of spacemen and the modern crisis of reality fatigue.
This is where the film stops being a psychological thriller and starts being a direct mirror of how we live now. The core idea is that the chaos and the difficulty of the physical world is prompting this mass collective escape into digital streams. We are actively choosing to wake up somewhere else.
And the foundation of that choice is building an ideal self. The men in the basement wanted a reality where they felt more important, more alive.
Which is exactly what we do online every single day. Creating digital avatars, choosing the right Instagram filter, curating a LinkedIn profile. These are the ideal selves we build in our digital dreams.
We're performing Inception on ourselves, hoping the curated version will eventually overwrite the messy physical self.
And this flight from friction, it leads to some pretty toxic behaviors. Our research notes classify doom scrolling as a perverse form of negative escape.
It's a total paradox, right? You're fleeing the anxiety of the real world only to submit to a guaranteed, anxiety-inducing digital flow.
You're trading the slow, unpredictable pain of life for the fast, constant dread that the algorithm provides. You trade one cage for another.
And this is where the film's mechanics connect so perfectly to our screen time dilation.
This is such a crucial connection. In the movie, with use of sedative, time expands dramatically with each level you go down. A few minutes in the van can feel like a week in the first dream level.
Let's break down those numbers from the sources because they're wild. 3 minutes of real time equals 1 hour in level 1.
Okay, but then those same 3 real-world minutes become a full week in level 2.
And at level 3, it's 6 months. It's an exponential expansion.
And that is exactly how digital life functions psychologically. You look at the clock, you think you've only been scrolling for a minute, and an hour of reality has just melted away.
Or the reverse. 10 minutes of doom scrolling through some crisis feels like you've been emotionally digesting it for hours. The algorithm is the new sedative. It completely distorts your perception of time.
And the sources suggest that the only way out is to shift from that toxic dream of doom scrolling to a lucid dream, content that educates and challenges you, content that requires active engagement, not passive absorption.
This need for vigilance brings us to Cobb's most famous line about ideas.
The most dangerous element in the film, arguably. He says, an idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious. The smallest seed of an idea can grow. It can define or destroy you.
That is a perfect, almost terrifying definition of modern viral content, of meme culture. An idea, once it's planted, whether it's a political meme or a conspiracy theory, is almost impossible to get rid of.
It just takes root in your subconscious and colors everything that comes after.
And you apply this directly to Mal. The idea Cobb planted in her, this world isn't real, it was a virus.
It grew into a full-blown philosophy of solipsism, and it led to her death. And this directly mirrors the mindset of people who fall for disinformation today. If you allow that idea that the world outside your echo chamber is unreal or fake to take root, you become psychologically possessed by it.
Our sources are basically calling on you, the listener, to actively defend your mind against these viral ideas. Because the line between just consuming content and having your internal reality colonized is getting dangerously thin. So we've looked at the mechanics of the dream, the psychology of the dreamer, the modern parallels. Now we get to the philosophical core of Inception, the angle of reality, the big question. Can we even prove objective truth, or is reality, at the end of the day, a choice?
This is why the totem is so much more than just a cool prop. It's a philosophical anchor. Arthur has his weighted dice. Ariadne has her hollowed-out chess piece.
And Cobb has his top. These little objects, let them do a quick reality check based on physics they understand.
But the sources point to a really subtle, often overlooked detail that might be the strongest piece of evidence about Cobb's state. It bypasses the top completely.
And that is?
His wedding ring. Cobb's true unconscious totem is his wedding ring.
How does that work?
If you watch the film very closely, you'll see he only wears his wedding ring in scenes that are confirmed to be dreams. Because in the dream, he's still emotionally bound to Mal.
But in scenes that are supposedly reality, like when he's meeting Saito or trying to get back to the U.S.?
The ring is gone. It's a consistent continuity marker.
So in that final scene, when he walks through the airport gate?
No ring. His hand is bare. Which is this powerful, subtle piece of evidence rooted in his psychological state that he has returned to the physical consensus world. He's no longer married to the ghost of Mal.
But of course, the big question, the one everyone still argues about, is the top.
The top. In that final shot, it spins. It wobbles a little. The sources note that subtle vibration, but It cuts to black before we see it fall.
And there are all these theories, people claiming they can hear it fall in the sound sign.
But visually, it's ambiguous. And that ambiguity is the entire point. Nolan himself has confirmed his intent here. The objective physical fact of whether the top falls or not doesn't matter.
What matters is Cobb's action.
Exactly. He walked away and didn't look. He had that moment of doubt. He spun the top, but then he saw his children, and he made a conscious choice to disregard the validation mechanism.
He chose his subjective truth. You can compare it to Cypher in The Matrix,
Yeah.
right? Who chooses the illusion of the stake. Ignorance is bliss.
But I think Cobb's choice is a little different. He's not choosing ignorance, he's choosing priority. He prioritizes the emotional connection to his children, the meaning they provide, over some empirical external fact. He doesn't need the top to tell him his reality is real anymore. He chooses the emotional experience. He embraces what you could call subjective realism.
And this raises that huge philosophical challenge for all of us. Is reality defined by physics or by emotional experience? If a game or a film gives you a genuine transformative feeling, is that experience fake?
To you, the experience is real. Cobb shows that fulfilling subjective reality, but, and this is crucial, he did it without the radical certainty that destroyed Mal.
Mal fell into what you called the solipsism trap.
She embraced the philosophy that only my mind exists and everything else is a projection. Because of the idea Cobb planted, she extended that doubt to the physical world. She saw her children as just projections.
And that certainty, born from doubt, led to her suicide.
And this idea of solipsism is alarmingly current. We see this digital solipsism in online echo chambers all the time. When you only consume your own ideas reflected back at you by an algorithm, you can start to see the outside world as unreal.
People start calling those who disagree with them NPCs, non-playable characters.
It's a profound, tragic detachment. It is Mal's certainty, the absolute belief that only one's own internal perspective is valid manifesting in our modern world.
But Cobb managed to escape that. He chose attachment and love, even with the risk of doubt. He accepted the uncertainty of the top because he found certainty in his emotional anchors.
He defined his safe zone by choosing his reality, not by hiding from it.
So where does that leave us? We've gone from the film as a confession about filmmaking, through the psychological weight of guilt with Mal as the shadow, and ended with his modern flight from reality fatigue.
The journey of Inception is really a journey of courage. Cobb found the courage to choose his reality and just walk away without waiting for the physical world to give him permission. He moved past needing the top to fall.
So the true safe zone escape isn't about retreating into a fantasy. It's about having the courage to define your reality based on what brings you meaning, rather than waiting for some external force, the top, the algorithm, to validate your existence.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought. Something for you to explore on your own, drawn directly from the film's unresolved debate.
So we'll ask you this. If reality is defined by personal connection and internal feeling, more so than by external physics, what is your totem?
What is that one thing you look at, or that single, genuine emotional experience you cling to that tells you you are grounded?
How do you truly know you aren't dreaming right now?
Think about the weight of that question. It determines everything.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.